Ladies and gentlemen, we need to talk about the talking donkey story. In the book of Numbers, chapter 22, the Moabites are feeling threatened by the presence of the Israelites. So the Moabite king, Balak, sends for a man named Balaam, who can supposedly put a curse on the Israelites so the Moabites will be able to drive them away. Balaam tells the officials who come to him to stay the night so he can talk to God about it. Verse 12. But God said to Balaam, "Do not go with them. You must not put a curse on those people, because they are blessed." The next morning, Balaam got up and said to Balak's officials, "Go back to your own country, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you." So the Moabite officials returned to Balak and said, "Balaam refused to come with us." Then Balak sent other officials, more numerous and more distinguished than the first. They came to Balak and said, "This is what Balak son of Zippor says. Do not let anything keep you from coming to me, because I will reward you handsomely and do whatever you say. Come and put a curse on these people for me." But Balaam answered them, "Even if Balak gave me all the silver and gold in his palace, I could not do anything great or small to go beyond the command of the Lord my God. Now spend the night here so that I can find out what else the Lord will tell me." That night, God came to Balaam and said, "Since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you." Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the Moabite officials. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. I don't know about you, but my first reaction to this was, why is God mad? Isn't Balaam doing what he was told? Well, yes, but actually no. The reality is that Balaam is making subtle compromises to try and make things play out in his favor, and these compromises are so subtle that not only can they be missed on a first viewing, but one of them can even be undetectable depending on your translation. Let's start with the easy one. There was no reason for Balak's officials to stay the night on their second visit. God had already made his opinion clear. The Israelites are my people, don't curse them. That should have been enough for Balaam to tell the officials to get lost on their second visit, but he didn't, in case he could find out what else the Lord would tell him. Like God was going to change his mind or something. In reality, I think Balaam wasn't strong enough to shut the door on those tempting rewards just yet, and wanted to leave the door open to disobeying God for as long as possible. That was his first mistake, allowing temptation to persist instead of immediately annihilating it under the pretense that he needed to check with God. Suddenly, God's anger is looking more justified right about now. Balaam's next mistake is one that you won't even be able to pick up on if you read the NIV like I do. Let's reread 20 through the beginning of 22. That night, God came to Balaam and said, "Since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you." Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the Moabite officials. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. This seems as clear-cut of a case of obeying God as any, right? But now, let's read those verses in the New King James Version. "And God came to Balaam at night and said to him, 'If the men come to call you, rise and go with them, but only the word which I speak to you, that you shall do.' So Balaam rose in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. Then God's anger was aroused because he went, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as an adversary against him." Oh, now things are getting interesting. That "if" makes all the difference, doesn't it? Suddenly, God is giving Balaam an inch, and Balaam is taking a mile. It paints a very clear picture. Balaam is chomping at the bit to give in to this temptation, and apparently willing to misinterpret the word of God to get what he wants. I do want to disclaim that I don't actually know which of these translations is the correct interpretation. I like the more continuous picture painted by New King James, but I have to imagine NIV had a reason for using the wording it did. It's also worth noting that my interpretation of the New King James Version could possibly be wrong. After all, it's not hard to imagine that in the morning, those officials probably would have been like, "Are you sure you don't want to come with us?" And it just didn't get recorded in the original text. Who knows? I'm just going to assume the correct interpretation is the one that fits my narrative for this video. Okay, back on track. The Bible has numerous examples of blatant, horrible sins that are valuable to learn from, but I find the subtlety of Balaam's sinful behavior to be incredibly realistic and personally convicting. So the questions I want the both of us to have on our minds this week are, where am I allowing temptation to persist in my life because I'm not willing to fully surrender my sin to God? And what are the subtle compromises I make that don't reflect God's plan?